I am a doctor, and right now I'm here on a beach in Portugal getting paid. That's because I have one of the coolest jobs where I get to fly around the world to bring back Canadians who got sick while traveling, and I have vlogged some of these trips here on this channel, but usually only including the Instagrammable version. So this time, let's go through the real life of one of these trips, including all of the many non-Instagrammable, non-Portugal beach moments. This trip, like most, started with a fair bit of work before anything actually happens. That means reviewing many pages of medical records, communicating with the coordinators around flight plans and ground transportation, and sometimes after all that work, the trips don't even happen. And that limbo, waiting to see if you're leaving for Europe tomorrow or not, is definitely one of the least glamorous parts of this job. On this one, things shifted around. It ended up happening a day later than expected and 4 hours earlier than expected, but thankfully, it did all come together. This trip also started surprisingly smooth at airport security, which is a rare treat. Sometimes it can take up to 45 minutes to get through security with the medical equipment, so I'll take the win where I can get it. After that, it was time for a meal before the flight to Toronto. And upon arrival in Toronto, I spent about an hour in Uber's round trip to get to base to swap out some malfunctioning equipment. There is a lot of time sitting in the back of Ubers for this job, and that part never makes the highlight reel. Then it was back to the airport and off to Europe. The flights without the patient are often the most relaxing part of the job. There's no responsibilities, there's guilt-free plane naps, but the non-Instagrammable part, these flights are usually in economy, much like this very turbulent red-eye. And for a lot of people, this is definitely an undesirable part of the job. And then immediately upon arriving in Europe, in this case in Portugal, the first thing that I had to do was immediately go to assess the patient, which of course meant another Uber ride. Once that's done though, then I usually get about 20 hours of freedom like I did this time. Although this time I was staying at a kind of unusual hotel setup, and they were certainly very strict about their 3 p.m. check-in time, with no consideration of early access to the room under any circumstances, even for a fee. So I dropped my bags and went out. It was about 20 degrees and sunny in early March, and honestly, just walking around a new place in Europe never gets old for me. So this afternoon included a couple of cafes with some very good coffee, some sushi, because I felt like sushi, and then eventually, at 3 p.m. sharp, a much needed shower before heading out towards the beach. This hotel might not have won points for much, but it was less than a 5-minute walk from the ocean, which definitely helped. I went for a short run and then sat by the ocean and ultimately had dinner while watching the sunset. All of this, though, was happening while, to be completely honest, I felt slightly unwell from the jet lag and either too much or not enough caffeine, but I still really appreciated it. A couple of days earlier, I had no idea that I would be making this trip to Europe, and now I find myself eating European pastries and watching the sunset in Portugal. So it really is such a privilege to get to have these moments, but underneath it all, it very much is still a job. And with that job, rest is obviously extremely important before being responsible for a patient on a long journey home. So on these one-night stops, that usually means being in bed by around 8 p.m. and trying for 9 hours of sleep. I succeeded generally this time, and the next morning I went to the only cafe that's open early enough, but found that their espresso machine was broken. Luckily, my slightly sketchy hotel, by the way, no clock, no phone, and questionable locks, did have an espresso machine, so that at least saved the day. Then it was a time for another long drive to the airport. Now, when I'm with the patient, we use a car service, which is nice, but it's still another hour in the back seat of a vehicle. But at least the views started off pretty good this morning. The airports are where things usually get stressful. There's almost always something that comes up. Check-in issues, challenges with the wheelchair services, paperwork issues, and you're trying to solve all of this without the patient or the family feeling stressed, which means you can't show that you're stressed, but you certainly still feel it. On the plane then, there's a bit of time to rest, and of course, we're with the patient in business class. So yes, the lamb and the chocolate cake were awfully nice, but you are always watching the patient and always ready in case something changes. Thankfully, today's flight was uneventful and we landed in Toronto, made our way through customs, and got the patient safely home after another drive. And after that, and meeting up with a friend, I came here to my hotel in Toronto. I've stayed here at least a dozen times, so it feels familiar, and after all of the moving parts of today, familiar is very nice. I'm grateful for getting to do this work and getting to catch up with friends when I make these travels. There was a colleague that I worked with in this industry who, when people would hear about what we were traveling for and would say, wow, that must be such a cool job, he would just grumble and say, all we ever see is airports and hospitals. And honestly, a lot of the time, there is some truth to that. There's a lot of terminals, a lot of hotel rooms, a lot of car rides. It's not always remarkable and it's not always some must-see destination, but for me, the things that I get to see still do matter to me. But it's much more about these small moments, the short walk by the beach, the quiet sunset, the familiar faces of friends I get to visit on short notice, and helping someone get back home safely from what was a very stressful situation. This work is tiring, it's unpredictable, it is definitely not for everyone, but for me, right now, it's worth it, even though I am very tired, ready to go to bed, and ultimately get back home tomorrow. Thanks very much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.